Today on 122 of our journey through the Bible, we come to the book of Amos. The name Amos means burden bearer. He prophesied to the northern kingdom, but he was actually a native of the southern kingdom in Judah. He came from the village of Tekoa, about 10 miles south of Jerusalem. Amos admitted that he was not descended from a line of prophets or any other kind of religious officials. By vocation, he was nothing more than a herdsman and a tender of sycamore fruit. But he pointed out that his right to speak came from the highest authority of all. The Lord took me as I followed the flock, and the Lord said to me, "Go prophesy to my people Israel." The 9 chapters of the book of Amos emphasize one great central theme. The people of the nation of Israel have broken their covenant with God, and his judgment against their sin will be severe. After a brief introduction of Amos the prophet, the book falls into 3 major sections. It begins with judgment against the nations, including Judah and Israel, sermons of judgment against Israel, and then finally visions of God's judgment. The book concludes with a promise of Israel's restoration. In the first major section of the book, Amos begins with very biting words of judgment against the 6 nations that surround the lands of Judah and Israel. Next, he announces God's judgment against Judah. Because of Israel's bitterness towards Judah, Amos listeners probably greeted this cry of doom with some pleasant agreement. But Amos was only warming up to the main part of his sermon. Suddenly, he launched into a vivid description of God's judgment against the nation of Israel. With biting sarcasm, Amos condemned the citizens of Israel for their oppression of the poor, worship of idols, rejection of God's salvation, and defilement of the Lord's holy name. True worship had been replaced by empty ritualism and dependence on pagan gods, and Amos made it plain that Israel would be judged severely unless the people turned from their sin and looked to the one true God for strength and guidance. In the second major section of the book, Amos preached 3 biting sermons of judgment against the nation of Israel. He referred to the wealthy, luxury-seeking women of Samaria, the capital of Israel, as fat cows of Bashan. He also attacked the system of idol worship, which King Jeroboam had established in the cities of Bethel and Gilgal. Following these sermons of judgment, Amos moved on in the third major section of his book to present 5 visions of God's approaching judgment. In his vision of a fruit basket, he described the nation of Israel as a basket of summer fruit, implying that it would soon spoil and rot in the blistering sun of God's judgment. Following these messages of judgment, the book of Amos ends on a positive, optimistic note. Amos predicted that the people of Israel would be restored to their special place in God's service after their season of judgment had come to an end. This note of hope is characteristic of the Hebrew prophets. They pointed to a glorious future for God's people, even in the midst of dark times. Amos is known as the great prophet of righteousness in the Old Testament. In chapter 5, verse 24, the famous words for the prophet are these: "Let justice run down like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream." This is a great book to sit down and just read the entire book in one setting. I encourage you to pick an evening soon and to meditate on the thoughts and the truths that you'll experience in this great book. I think you will carry much truth from the experience. Well, let me read from Amos chapter 3, and I'm going to begin with verse 1. "Hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O people of Israel, against the whole family I brought up out of the land of Egypt. You only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. Do 2 walk together unless they've agreed to meet? Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a young lion cry out from his den if he has taken nothing? Does a bird fall in a snare on the earth when there is no trap for it? Does a snare spring up from the ground when it has taken nothing? Is a trumpet blown in a city and the people are not afraid? Does disaster come to a city unless the Lord has done it? For the Lord God does nothing without revealing his secret to his servants the prophets. The lion has roared. Who will not fear? The Lord God has spoken. Who can but prophesy?"